one into the physical demands of hurling and football. We're going to give a brief overview next slide of these demands, but if you feel we left you a bit short, I'd recommend that you go back to look at the slides that we presented in week 1, and also Mick has finally uploaded the video from that onto the YouTube page as well. So I'd encourage you to go look at that as well. Again, if we leave you anywhere short in this next slide, there's quite a bit of content in it. Just make sure you drop a question into Mick and he'll pass it on to us. Okay, so the game demands. Some of you might recognise this graph and the table. This data is coming from Damien Young, did the hurling under 17 hurling inter-county minor team, and a mixture of Brian Cullen's paper on under 18 football, county and club, and Riley, he did development squad under 15 as well. So there's a mixture of their data. So what we have is total distance per minute, high speed running, very high speed running, sprints, a number of sprints, the distance of the sprints, and the number of accelerations and max velocity. So across this, we're kind of given in numbers what the players are expected to do in a match in hurling and football. And I suppose just to give everyone an understanding of how these numbers are calculated, what we have across the bottom is a GPS graph. So that line, as it goes up and down throughout the whole way across, that's indicating how fast the player is moving throughout the game. So you can see he's down low, bouncing along the green zone, and then he shoots up into the purple, and then he comes down again into the green and up into the purple, yellow, and so on. I suppose what this is telling us is that when we think about the game, and if we think about the movements of a player, we can classify Gaelic football and hurling as a high-intensity intermittent sport interspersed with low aerobic activity. So what we mean by that is we do a high-intensity activity. It could be a sprint, an acceleration, a deceleration, a tackle, and then we come down into a low zone where we might be walking, shuffling, backpedaling, just staying outside our man. And then we'll go again, and it's all in relation to the demand of the game and the pattern of play of what's going on. So what we really need to do, we need to be able to sustain somewhere between 5,500 to 6,500 meters in a match. High speed running will be any meters covered over 17 kilometers an hour, and then very high speed will be sprinting at over 22 kilometers an hour. And then we have a bit of a brief description on the sprints as well. So you can see that it's quite a taxing game. We do somewhere between 130 and 190 accelerations in a game, and we get up to speeds somewhere between 29 and 31 kilometers an hour. So and this is all at youth level. So the players are moving at quite a considerable speed. So this is what we're getting the lads ready for. So we're kind of setting the scene of what the game's demands are and how they need to be conditioned. And I suppose there's a very famous S&C coach who summed it up very well in relation to conditioning. Our aim is to increase the intensity, sustainability and frequency of a high intensity effort. Okay, so increasing the intensity means increasing the speed that the player can travel at, increase the speed that he can accelerate, decelerate, the impact he can do in a tackle, and so on and so forth, the speed he can jump. So that's the intensity of the action. And then the sustainability and the frequency is ensuring that he can sustain that throughout the match. So he doesn't go missing for a few minutes in the game, getting his recovery, and he's able to respond to the demands of the game to influence the game whenever required. And to add, Kieran?
No, that was pretty much all covered there. So that's kind of, as Paul said, painting the picture as we go further into the presentation, and kind of giving a brief summary of what we covered over the last few weeks.
Great stuff. Okay, over to you, Kieran.
Let's flick on to the next slide there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of over the next wee part of the presentation, we're kind of just going to touch on two strategies: high intensity interval training and small sided games. We're going to take a bigger kind of focus on small sided games, and kind of focusing on putting your game plan or your game model into small sided games, but also getting your physiological improvements as well. And kind of Kildare lads did a presentation on Monday. If you kind of want to go into the nitty gritty of guidelines, player numbers, pitch dimensions of small-sided games, so that will be sent out later afterwards. If you want to flick down, Paul. Okay, so we're just going to kind of give a quick, brief overview of HIIT training. Okay, so again, if you want a more detailed description of HIIT, myself and Paul did a conditioning workshop for Leinster, so we'll go into these methods in a lot more detail. So kind of what the three more popular ones is your long intervals. Okay, so you have three types: your intensive, which is a 1 to 2 work to rest; your normal, which is a 1 to 1; and your extensive is your 2 to 1. So that will kind of be spread the same between long and short intervals, and just varying in intensity and duration. And your tempo then, which is more speed focused. Okay, it's a work to rest of 1 to 3. Okay, so again, focusing on your high speed running, which we'll touch on later in the presentation, and that we've touched on kind of our sprint protocols over the last 2 weeks. But again, when the slides are sent out, if you click on the link, conditioning in Gaelic football, you get a more detailed explanation of all the different interval methods. But for the next part, we're going to exclusively focus on small-sided game and implementing our game into our games.
Kieran, I'll just show them. So myself and Kieran did this for Leinster back in mid-April. So and this one was designed for senior players. So again, we went to physical demands, but really we can show you that we went pretty further into interval methods. So we gave terminology and description and all that. So that's all going to be available to you. So we're not shortchanging in relation to conditioning methods this evening. We kind of have that presentation already delivered. So that's the reason that we're going the small-sided game or the game model. Happy to flick on?
Yep, go. Okay, so just going to kind of run through some advantages and disadvantages of your small-sided games versus your traditional running drills. I suppose the big advantage from small-sided games is your kind of technical, tactical development that you get to go alongside your physiological aspect. Having GPS adds a huge motivational factor, so it kind of gives you an insight to the player. You can tell the players who are kind of maybe bluffing, not working as hard as they should be, but also the lads that are working really hard and implementing what you want to see. And I suppose not having the GPS available for small-sided games kind of probably leans you more towards traditional running drills, which kind of, it's easier to prescribe. You know exactly what distance they're doing, you know exactly what intensity they're operating at, and you know the total volume of what they're running. So it kind of there's kind of some of the advantages of small-sided games and traditional running drills. Okay, some of the disadvantages: it is hard to gauge kind of the intensity of your games, and you have bigger increase of risk of injury through contacts. And then I suppose the big one is that the intensity of your small-sided games comes down to the technical ability of your player. If the ball keeps getting dropped or if it keeps going out of the square, the game slows down. You're not getting that physiological improvement. So your technical skill is probably one of the big advantages or disadvantages depending on the players that you have at your disposal. And I suppose on the running side of it then, you're not really mimicking the specific movements of the game or getting that technical and tactical development. So just kind of painting the picture of your kind of advantages and disadvantages of using one method compared to the other, but both of them have a place in your periodized plan over the year. Anything from you?
Yeah, I suppose a key one there, Kieran, is if we really focus on the age that we've targeted in this webinar series. So like we're in that youth age, somewhere between 13 and 18. The players are in a developmental phase. So when we think about the player, technical, tactical, team play, physical, psychological focus, they're all in that developmental phase. So that's where we probably encourage you to use small-sided games, for the fact that if we go for the traditional running model of the high-intensity interval training, yes, we'll get conditioned, but they haven't perfected or they haven't fully developed the technical skills or the tactical skills. So we're leaving them incomplete to a degree. So we're kind of saying, yes, you mightn't get the exact same impact or the exact same success or adaptation out of small-sided games, but you might create a more developed player through it. One other one that jumped out to me a lot in this model would be the advantages. It's actually in both sides of traditional running drills and small-sided games, gain an insight into the player's character and motivation. And it's funny you say that, like, John. So there's actually an argument on both sides. Is it more important that the players complete a lot of high-intensity running and put in full intent and effort in a small-sided game where they have to make a choice to do it, or else we can ensure they do it by lining up on the line and running to the line at a hard intensity because the whistle was blown and that's the instruction to do? Which one is going to carry over to the match? And when a player has to make a decision of tracking back someone or making that hard run or breaking that tackle or making something happen, when the option is there of if he does or doesn't do it and it's all in his decision, is he conditioned to make that decision or through the traditional running drills? Whereas if we can get that decision being made regularly through small-sided games, probably through a bit of coaching and through a bit of education, it will probably happen that bit more regularly in the matches as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I suppose the big thing, as you said, is kind of developing the footballer or the younger players' technical and tactical side of it. And when they hit the 17s, 18 age group, then you can kind of start implementing your more traditional running drills. But the hardest part of developing a footballer is your technical and tactical. It's not the conditioning side of it. And in them younger age groups, as we all know, that is the most important aspect, is developing that technical and tactical side of the player.
Yeah, dead on. I'll flick on, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we've kind of made a sales pitch, or we've kind of given you a quick description of the two different models or the two different strategies we might use in relation to conditioning and the youth athlete. And we haven't given you much on high intensity interval, and we're going to direct you towards other resources for that. And we're going to spend a bit more time now discussing the small-sided games. Okay, so the next phase is going to define and implement the game model through small-sided games. Okay, so a key thing that we want you to take on this evening is small-sided games are great, and there's a lot of discussion about the benefits of them and that they improve technical and tactical team play, all of these. But what we're trying to get across this evening is a key part of that is the coach has to actually have a focus on the small-sided game. Okay, there's loads of games out there that might get the physical and technical development, but they won't have that tactical focus, which won't lead to the player performing better for your team. So the first phase of that, of creating a focus to your training, to your small-sided games, is actually identifying or creating your game model, or this is your style of play. Okay, so this comes from tactical periodization, and we're going to go into these few slides. We're going to give a brief description of that. So what we have here is these elements in the circles with the arrows pointing to them all feed into the style of play or the game model that you might want to implement. Okay, so the first one, player capabilities. We're actually going to talk about that in the next slide a little bit more, so we'll skip on. We'll go on to the second one there, club and county structure and culture. Okay, so what we mean by that is the structure and culture of your club or county could potentially influence the style of play that you have. An example of that is probably if we look at the likes of Currafin and Galway. Okay, both of them play a nice, attractive, kick-in, long, direct style of game. Okay, all the players are very comfortable off both feet and they're all very athletic as well. Okay, and I suppose does one influence the other? So Galway would have had that traditional model, and now Currafin have made it, have perfected it over the last few years. And did the Galway structure influence Currafin? Either way, both teams are there's a tradition or there's an expectation that these teams play to that structure. And there was a lot of kind of frustration at Kevin Walsh's methods of coaching the last couple of years, because the Galway people felt that Kevin had gone away from the traditional model of that type of game, which has been implemented by Currafin. And now that Pádraig Joyce is back in, you can kind of see that Currafin model is back in the Galway game as well. Another example of that might be Davy Fitz. Any of the counties he's went to, he's been extremely successful in hurling, between Wexford, Waterford, Clare. But again, there's a lot of traditionalists there in those counties, particularly Wexford and Waterford, that were frustrated by the style of game that Davy had them playing. even though he won Munsters with Waterford, he got them to an All-Ireland final. He's won Leinster with Wexford, and he was a puck of a ball away from getting an All-Ireland final last year. But there's still people who'd be frustrated by his style of play or his coaching ideas because of the traditional structure or culture of the county. And the moments of the game, we're going to go into that again in a slide or two, so we'll skip on to that. Again, the coaching ideas will influence your game model. So your kind of ideas are the best way to play the game. So you might be attracted to a style of play, a long style play, a running style play, a give and go, a blanket defense, a transition style. So whatever you think works well is going to obviously influence the way you ask a team to play for yourself. And what this does is all these ideas or all these other aspects are going to direct you towards principles and sub-principles of play. So these are kind of behaviors or structures that we build into our training model, and we're going to touch on that in a couple of minutes. And to add, Kieran?
Yeah, just kind of what we're going to outline now in our game model it's kind of our opinion or kind of the game plan we want to implement with our team. So for you as coaches, you got to come away from tonight and kind of put together your own philosophy or add to your own philosophy if you have it, and put in your own principles and principles of play that suit you or your players. So we've just kind of painted the picture. We're just giving our examples, but by no means are we saying this is the way it should be. It's up for you as coaches to design your game model, your principles, your sub-principles. So we're just painting the picture over the next few slides.
Definitely, yeah. The key takeaway from tonight is the structure we're presenting to you as opposed to the actual play. Okay, so we referenced in the last slide there that player capability is going to influence our style of play, our team, and also the opposition when they're playing against us. Okay, so what we mean by that, we've pulled out some inter-county stars of the current game who, when we had a chat about it this week, we identified that each of these players influence the style of play of their team, the game model of their team, and generally of the opposition who's coming up against them. So we just go quickly through them. Stephen Cookston, goalkeeper up in the right-hand corner. He's revolutionised the kick out of the modern football game. Okay, he's the first point of attack for Dublin. So he's a massive arsenal for them. That he sets up the attack. He has the ball down within 7 seconds and it's gone out. He can go long, he can go short, and the numbers that come in of attacks that are started straight from Stephen Cookston is phenomenal. Okay, so what he's done is he influences his team's game model and also the opposition setup. Do they go tight man to man? Do they press up? Do they overload the kick out? So he's having a massive influence in how other teams' style of play is set up to combat him or the Dublin team. We see Michael Murphy next. Okay, so think about Michael Murphy when he's playing full forward. He's probably quite a traditional style player in relation to, you think about maybe Owen Bomber Liston or someone like that, a real powerful man at the edge of the square. But he's just so effective at it that he's going to be a massive attraction for the Donegal lads to kick the ball in long, because every ball will stick. And also he's probably going to make the opposition double team or create an overload in defence to protect against them. If we all think about the Donegal 2012 All-Ireland when they bet Mayo, a long ball in off Carl Lacey on top of Michael Murphy, he threw the full back out of the way and it's a goal. And it's probably the difference in the match. If we go over to the hurling side, down the left-hand corner, we've Paddy Marr reaching for a ball over Walter Walsh. He's influencing the Tipperary team in relation to the opposition now have to think about different ways, coming away from the traditional model of striking the ball long from the puck out down on top of the opposition for the half forwards to compete, because he's so strong in the air that generally you're just hitting the ball onto a wall and it's coming back at you. So now you see the teams are trying to either pull Paddy Marr or Ronan Marr out of the game, out to the wing, or else they're striking the ball through the lines and going a shorter style game. So again, they're influencing the style of play. Another attacking one, Pa Horgan. So we see how the Cork team deliver the ball into Pa Horgan. He's just so effective and so deadly inside in the inside line. They're delivering balls low and fast on the outside of him, putting him in positions that probably you wouldn't want most corner forwards to be. But Pa Horgan is so accurate on the wings that giving him the advantage of receiving the ball on the outside near the sideline, doesn't put him in a negative position because he can swing the ball over from any position. So again, it's kind of influencing how Cork play. And I suppose the last two, very quickly, TJ Reid and Shane Walsh, hurling football, two just extreme talents that probably positively influence their team, that if they're near you probably give them the ball because they're going to do something magical with it, and they win their own ball and they look after themselves as well. So this is just kind of showing how players or the player capabilities you have at hand or you're up against could potentially influence how you set up or the style of play that you might want to play. Do you want to add anything, Kieran?
Yeah, and I suppose just when you're kind of developing your players through them younger age groups, is kind of all the players that are in the picture is a snapshot. All the players are comfortable on both sides. They're comfortable on the ball. A lot of the times they make the right decisions under pressure. So that's what you want from your players to progress through the senior football. And then as well, they're all very flexible tactically. Michael Murphy can come out, play around midfield. Shane Walsh last year had a different role with Galway than he has this year. So they can rotate in between different systems. So they're very comfortable in that. And I suppose when you're designing your game model, when you get them to adult football, you want them to be technically gifted, but as well quite aware tactically and quite flexible between different systems. So it's kind of what you want from your players, or how you want to develop your players in them younger age groups leading up through into senior.
Yeah, and I suppose one other thing that we'd probably recommend in relation to the player capability part of the style of play is just be probably a little bit aware in the younger years, that 13 to 15, 16 age group, that we don't build the game too much around some of our stronger players, particularly if they're strong in a physical capacity. So they might have went through an earlier relative age effect. So they might be under 14, but they've the body shape and the strength of a 16 or 17-year-old. Because generally what we'll find is that they're all going to, by the age, once they've all reached maturity, they're all going to be within a couple of inches of each other, and we generally determine how strong and fit we are by how we commit to our training. So that kind of positive or that strength that person has mightn't stand to them by the time we get to senior. So it's kind of at the younger ages, we'd be just a little bit hesitant of directing you towards kind of building your model around the strongest players, kind of have a more global view of they're all developing, we're trying to develop them all, and because we don't know who's going to make the senior team and so on. So just be a little bit hesitant on that as well. Happy enough?
Yeah.
Okay, so we briefly touched on tactical periodization already. This is probably just another quick definition of it. If you want to see more on tactical periodization, I'm going to send a link out as well. Shane Mangan presented on the National Conference webinars a couple of weeks ago on it. It was a very good presentation, and we took a good bit of insight from it as well. So very briefly, tactical, technical, physical and behavioural components are trained simultaneously. So this is a key aspect of tactical periodization. So we're saying that you can train each of these components together, and obviously they'll take on different importance depending on the session that we're training, but none should be left out. Okay, and then training sessions focus is related to at least one of the 5 moments of the game. So we spoke there earlier how the moments of the game are going to influence our game model. The 5 moments would be, we can break the game down into 5 moments, which would be attack, transitioning from attack to defense. So we might have been on the attack, we lost the ball, and now we have to transition into defense. Defending, transitioning from defending to attack. So we might have turned over the ball, and now we have to break up the field to attack. And then the last one, which is unique to GAA, Shane Mangan is promoting this, is contesting the possession. So he's identified through the numbers and through the data that contesting the possession and being successful in the contesting of possession in hurling and football has a massive outcome on who wins the match. Okay, so if we win more of those contests, we're going to win the match, is kind of what the data is telling us. Happy enough, Kieran?
Yeah, and then just having these moments and breaking your game into these moments, it just gives a wee bit extra focus and clarity to your small-sided games, instead of having a 4 versus 4 just for contact and making them work hard. You may have a 4 versus 4 and you score by delivering a kick pass to your teammates, which is the example we'll use later on in the slide. But it just helps to give focus on what aspect of the game that you want to develop. So you may have a transition from attack or defense to attack, but that'll also incorporate your attack as well. But it just gives you, and then it just gives you a focus to what you're doing on your Tuesday and Thursday nights, and you have just a big focus on what you want.
Yeah. Okay, so then the next part of tactical periodization, we break the game, or how one of the key principles of it is breaking the game into principles and sub-principles of play for each of the 5 game moments. Okay, so the 5 game moments, attack right through to contest and possession, they're all the moments, and for each of those moments we can break it into principles and sub-principles of those moments. So the principles or sub-principles are the instructions that the coach wants the player to perform during each of these moments. By structuring the game model into principles or sub-principles, you can increase the predictability of unpredictable game events. So what that means is, rather than when we get the ball in defence, we've turned over the attacker, and then just it's up to the defender to do whatever he wants. He could kick it long, he could carry, he could hand pass, and he could go to the wing, he could go up the middle. By kind of actually nearly laying out a kind of, if you have the opportunity, we'd recommend that you go this direction and might be out to the wing. Then all the players understand that if the number 6 gets it in defence, he's going to try break to the wing, and that's the delivery zone. Then everyone knows where to get to. So now we've made something that's very unpredictable be a little bit more predictable. So here we have, and again, we can't stress this enough, we're going to give examples of principles and sub-principles of play, but these aren't in any way to be taken away thinking, oh, this is the way you play football or hurling. It's more a case of an understanding of how these work and kind of giving a definition on what we're talking about. So the first one, contest for possession. So what we're saying, our main principle would be win your individual battle. So try win the ball. That'd be a key concept in Kilkenny particularly. They've placed a massive emphasis on everyone being able to win their own ball. Sub-principles, that would be create a closing distance, create and close distance between you and your opponent, and then finally game intelligence. So it'll be kind of, as the ball is dropping, do you give the man a nudge of the hips or whatever you have to do to be just a bit cuter? If you know that the ball is dropping under 2 midfielders, understanding that your midfielder often breaks the ball to the front or whatever. So that's kind of increasing your game intelligence. Okay, and we have these for each one. I'm not going to go through each of them, but what we'd have is transition to attack, get into your defensive shape, defense, pressure the ball, and attack, creating and finding space. So we've kind of just broken down, each of them has a principle and sub-principle. So we're going to go into the next one. I'm going to hand you over to Kieran, and he's going to talk about the last moment of the game, which is transition from the defense to attack. Over to you, Kieran.
Yeah, so just kind of an example we're going to work on for football is transition from defense to attack. Okay, so the main principle of what we want is depth and attack, or movement and attack. Okay, so we want our half forwards to stay deep in the 45, make the pitch big, make the pitch wide. Okay, so providing width, and we want our full forward line to stay deep along the end line again, providing depth and width. If they get sucked up towards the ball, they close the space, and our game plan will break down. We can't deliver that long ball to our half forwards or to our full forward. So what we're looking to do is play a kicking game. Okay, similar, we'll have examples now next. Okay, so trying to play a kicking game with 6 forwards. Okay, we would push at younger age groups to kind of play with the 6 forwards, give the players that development before you exclusively focus on maybe playing with a sweeper or a different aspect that you may go with. Okay, so our main principle, depth and movement and attack. And from that, then we'll have our sub-principles. So for it to work, we need our players to look up. Our first pass forward, it may be short or it may be long, but when we get our head up, we're looking to hit our half forward line who are staying deep, or we're looking to hit our full forward line who also are staying deep. Okay. Another sub-principle then is obviously executing our kick pass and then getting support runners off our half forwards or off our full forward line. Okay, you can go into more details. You may have a sub-principle which would feed into them. Okay, so you may have triggers of when to release it, or defensively you may have triggers of when to press on the ball. Okay, so you can go into a wee bit more detail, but for tonight we just went with a main principle and 2 sub-principles. So Paul will put on a wee clip here just to kind of highlight what we're looking for, just to give a visual of what we're explaining. Okay, so the importance in that clip was Clifford staying long, so when they turned the ball over, they could deliver it into him. Okay, same in this example. Okay, you can see the support runners getting in support of the half forward or the full forward. Again, if the clips aren't overly clear when we send the presentation out, you'll see the clips and you'll see exactly. Okay, again, looking up, holding our depth, support runner off the shoulder.
That's us, Kieran, yeah.
Yeah, so as you can see from the clip, okay, that's what we're trying to mimic in our training session, okay? So that's where we're trying to focus on our principles and with our sub-principles. So when we're designing our small-sided games, we want to incorporate these aspects into it. So we want to look up, deliver our kick pass, okay, and we want our forwards to hold their depth. So in the two examples we're going to give to now, that's the main focus of these sessions. If you want to flick on there, Paul. Okay, so this is a main principle game. Okay, so this might be a Thursday night. It's a high-speed running focus. Okay, so the players are opening up and sprinting down the pitch. Okay, so the ball will start off the coaches. They'll feed to either the yellow or the blue. Okay, so whoever has possession and breaks through the gates, they play with the forwards who are red in this example. Okay, so if yellow break through the gates, they're looking up, delivering their kick pass to the reds, which may be on the half forwards who are on the switch, or if that pass isn't on, they're delivering into their full forward line. Okay, if the ball breaks down, okay, so if yellows have carried it out there, the attacking team, if the ball breaks down, the greens will play with the blues. So again, they're working on their transition out of defence into attack. Okay, so again, they got to work the ball up through the gates. Okay, and that would be a score for the defending team. Okay, the attacking team obviously putting the ball over the line or over the bar, sorry, will act as a score for the forwards. So again, you can see what we're trying to do here are using our principles of play, looking up, delivering our kick pass. Okay, forwards holding their depth, making movement by interchanging, and we're getting support runners. So the yellows and blues will play out of the box. Okay, so you're getting support runners off your half forwards or off your full forwards to execute the score. Okay, and then even when the defensive team turn the ball over, they're also transitioning and focusing on transition from defense to attack. Okay, so some of our sub-principle games now is the next example.
Yeah, Kieran, just so people don't think they haven't tuned into the wrong one. Yeah, we're talking quite a bit this evening on the tactical is actually the focus, and that's kind of the nature of tactical periodization. But under this then, when me, Steph and Kieran and the lads were designing this, there's a massive aspect in this game of high-speed running, very high-speed running, accelerations, decelerations. So the players through this game, and we're going to give an insight into reps and sets and durations of these games, they are getting that conditioning focus or that conditioning aspect. So it's kind of what we're kind of encouraging is small-sided games are great, and you can play any game. You could play 4v4 possession game, and you could get the physiological development out of it. What we're kind of pushing you this evening to do is have a tactical focus of how it's going to improve how the team plays and still get that physical development as well. Is that fair enough, Kieran?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like as you can see, it's 12v12 here, so it's obviously full pitch. So they have to operate at huge speeds to get support of the forwards, or when the defenders turn the ball over, they got to transition at huge speeds. So there is huge physiological adaptations here that can occur. But as Paul said, we're getting that, but we're also getting our philosophy of play embedded in our small-sided games.
Yeah, dead on.
Okay, so this is our sub-principle game. Okay, so this would fall into our Tuesday, which we will give an overview at the end of the session. Okay, so it's more focused towards acceleration and decelerations, small-sided pitch. So you can see it's 4v4 either side of the pitch. Okay, what we're focusing on here is one of our sub-principles is looking up and delivering a kick pass to our teammate in the other square. Okay, so to score, delivering a kick pass. Okay, so on one side the ball, it's 4 versus 4, 3 hand passes, and then they deliver the kick pass to one runner coming out of the square. Okay, so the ball is delivered, and then the blue team will work it back into the square to make 3 passes in the square, and then they got to look up to deliver it back down to the other square. Okay, so if the ball can't come, the runner's got to go back into the square, and then a new runner will have to break out. So again, you're working on your timing, but you're also working on your patience to deliver the ball. Okay, so it's working on our sub-principles, but again, you're working on your physiological side of it. Okay, so in the small-sided squares, it's small, it's intense, there's contact, but they have to look up, they have to deliver their pass, which falls again back into our game philosophy. Okay, and
on that, Kieran, we're simulating the nature of the game as well, that when the ball is down your end, you're going to be full on, it's going to be very intense and very taxing, and then the ball is going to travel out up to the other side of the pitch where that's the low activity occurring again, where you recover and then you go again. So we're replicating the nature of the game. And I suppose where this benefit occurs as well is we can't tell how long the rest periods are going to be in the match, and we can't tell how long the rest periods are going to be in this match. If the ball stays up there and they keep getting intercepted after 2 hand passes, well, then this group down the far side are going to get a longer rest. But that can happen in the match as well. So it's not always on the clock every 15 seconds we run. And that's a benefit as well. Exposing players to unpredictable bouts of work and rest is of benefit.
And then, next slide then. We're on to hurling.
Okay. Right, apologies to all those hurling coaches that had to endure football there for the last few minutes, all right? So hurling, we've gone for the attack, okay? So what we're saying is the moment of the game is the attack. Our main principle is probe for a goal, okay? So what we mean by that is when the ball goes into the forward line, our first thought is there a chance of a goal? Can I test the defender? Can I break the tackle? Can I go by him, see what happens here? Don't settle for a point, okay? So we're kind of get the players away from imagining the ball going into the corner forward, and as he controls it, he's nearly running back out the pitch, putting it over his shoulder, trying to score. We're encouraging him to turn, take on the defender, and try and make a goal happen, okay? So we're kind of encouraging players, let's probe for the goal and see what comes of it, because generally we're going to get an opportunity for a point if we get turned back on the goal. Okay, for that then, we're encouraging the players, our sub-principles, or what we're encouraging the players to do is be decisive. So if they receive the ball, control the ball, and then they think about it, they're definitely not going to get past the defender, all right? So the minute they get a control, it has to be decisive. Bang, we're going at the defender, trying to get by him. Second one, break the tackle, all right? So hurl on the front foot. So we want you to get by the near shoulder of the defender, hurl on the front foot. If you get caught up, hopefully we're going to have a support runner coming off the shoulder. But again, what we're talking about in predictable, turning the unpredictable predictable, if we know that when the ball goes into the corner forward or into the full forward and he's always going to try turn and round the defender, that means that we're going to get more lads committing to supporting the run. We're going to be able to simulate or kind of choreograph someone coming out the back door, that if he does get stopped, there's a ball out the back door where you can get it put over the bar. Whereas if the forwards do something different all the time and we don't know what they're going to do, well, then it's very hard to support them or be in a position where we can be of benefit to the team. So we're kind of choreographing, making the unpredictable predictable. Okay, so what we're going to do here again is going to show you some cool goals that were scored in last year's All-Ireland Championship, where we seen this is what's happening with the defenders. So here we have Carl Barrett, broke the tackle, hitting the ball on the front foot, sent the ball into Bubbles Dwyer, rounds Paul Murphy, and scores a goal. Okay, so we asked the question of Paul Murphy, and Paul Murphy dropped the hurl. Cork here in the National League, Seamus Hardy delivers the ball into Alan Cadigan, first top ball in hand, and he's gone around the defender. Okay, so he's asking the question as well, probing for a goal. Support runner knows Cadigan's going to do that, and he's off the shoulder. Next one here, the All-Ireland final. Full back for Tip, delivers. There's some transition play we might work on. Delivers the ball into Seamus Callan. Seamus Callan asks the question, goes by the man, finds Dwyer inside and scores a goal again. So he's always looking for the goal. He could have settled for a point. He could have got his tally up, but he's looking to see, is there a goal on here? And often there is. I think we've two more. It was hard to get rid of them. There's so many good ones in the hurling, Kieran.
You're neglecting the football.
Okay, so here's Galan for Limerick. Went around the defender, tacked the defenders, put a ball across the defence, and we got another score. So again, he could have put the ball over there, but he's like, no, let's see if we can probe for a goal. Okay, and last one, probably the best man to do it at hurling or football is Con O'Callaghan. So he gets the ball. There's a point. Most lads would be happy taking the point, but he takes it on and goal, and he gets nailed for it as well. Some people argue that Con runs in at goal because he can't strike the ball, but I wouldn't mind him on my team. Okay, so all we're doing there is we're painting the picture that probe for a goal as often as you can. Forwards always ask the question, is there a goal on? Okay, because we'll always generally get an opportunity to score a point. How we're going to develop that then, again, so this is the principal game. So this is the main emphasis of what we're looking for, okay? So the first thing we have, imagine that picture of Carl Barrett being cut around the middle. He breaks out of the tackle. Okay, what we're asking, or the instruction is that you have to break out the front of the grid. So those blue lines around the back of the grid, you're not allowed out any of that zone, okay? So the red team are attacking. They have to break out of the front of the grid so they can break out either side of the front half of the grid or out through the front gate. And then they're delivering the ball into the full forward line. The full forward line then are being encouraged to probe for a goal, see if there's a goal on. So as they receive the ball, obviously there's to control the ball, try around the defender, and then see if there's a goal on. Even striking on the front foot for a point is far easier than striking running away from the goal. So even breaking the tackle is a key aspect, even if there isn't a goal on. Okay, how we can progress that in then and make it once we get the hang of it. If the defenders win the ball here, they're going to work the ball out through either gate in the sides, the green gates. Okay, and then the progression we'd have is we'd add in a half forward line. So the same thing would happen around the middle. Red team are attacking. They have to get out through the front gates, deliver the ball in to any of the forwards, generally be into the full forward line. And then what we have then is, imagine that Cork clip again, where Alan Cadigan rounded the defender and you had wing forward steaming in off his shoulder going for a score. So we're bringing in that added element. We've also been bringing in a more realistic or more closer related to the real match. Now we've the added difficulty for the deliverers that they have to get it over a half back line or a bit of traffic around the middle. So they can't just hit a ball in low or it'll be intercepted by a defender around the middle. Okay, so that's the principles of the game. What we're looking for is the forwards in attack to probe for a goal. The lads around the middle from a transition to a forward point of view to break the tackle and strike the ball on the front foot. Okay, and then this will be our sub-principal game. So again, apologies about the graphics. I know it can be quite hard to understand descriptions like this, but bear with us. The game instructions, so we've the red team against the green team. The reds are shooting right to left as we look at the screen, and the greens are shooting left to right as we look at the screen. Okay, the ball is starting up in the right square. That's a red defender in the right square. If he works the ball out through the red gate, he delivers long to the red team. If the red team secure possession, they have to try get through either one of the gates. So they might break the tackle and solo through. They might try break the tackle and have someone coming off the shoulder to get through. And that'll be a score for their team. Okay, so that'll be 2-0 up to the Reds. When the red forward scores, he leaves the ball down and the Greens start the game off again. They have to work the ball out. The green defender has to work the ball out through the front of the square and deliver to the green team. The forwards for the Greens have to work to the back gates and the back square. Okay, so apologies again if anyone has any questions. Mix standing clear on the message board, but that's what we're looking for there. Again, you see what we're looking for in the game. The forwards being encouraged to come out the front of the box. They're striking the ball and looking for a delivery on the front foot. And the defenders or the forwards who receive the ball are always trying to turn the man and get through a gate. Okay, so we're simulating what we want in the match, and that's a sub-principle. Okay, happy enough?
Yeah, so just as Paul said, if there's any questions, do fire them in. I know there was a lot of information there between the games and kind of setting our stall for our game, so do fire in any questions if you have them.
And again, you can think about watching this game. We'll have these games happening a lot in our training sessions, and we're doing some great work out the pitch. We just think by watching the last couple of webinars and seeing what's going on and kind of referring back to our own training, by actually painting the picture of what we want the players to do, we're actually going to get nearly more motivation and more application to the games, which increases the physiological adaptation and increases the accelerations, decelerations, high speed running, the hits, the tackles, the switches. All that goes up when the players really commit to the activity. So by increasing the tactical awareness and letting the players understand what we want, we're actually, everything's coming up together.
Yeah, just to come in on that as well, lads, I think it's widely accepted the importance of small-sided games, and what the lads are presenting on here is, yes, we all appreciate the small-sided games, and what the lads are really presenting on is that focus, just to really zone in on the focus of our small-sided games, as opposed to just putting up 4 cones and, as Kieran alluded to, just doing a random tackle drill that's gonna get the benefits 100% of the physical and technical. Let's just try and get a little bit smarter, kind of box clever, and actually try to get that focus with the game. As the lads have said, the physical development is nearly a byproduct of these games. So like the last 2 webinars was very much focused on fitness, speed, multi-directional in isolation, whereas this evening, the beauty of it is this evening with conditioning, we can actually blend in all our love of the game, and it's a byproduct of programming small-sided games intelligently and with a bit of focus on it then. So just to come in on that there, and just to let everybody know, and keeping an eye on the questions if anybody has anything yet.
Great, thanks, Mick. Okay, we'll move on. So, okay, so this is probably going to give a bit of science for anyone who's wondering, okay, well, what's going on? All right, we can't just be going out and throwing cones down on the pitch anywhere. Okay, so there's been a couple of studies done by Mangan and Casey over the last couple of years on kind of seeing, well, what does the different size pitches do to the game, and what's the physical demand and the physiological and technical demand, or how does it influence what's going on in the trainings? So a very cool study done by Mang in 2019, he set up the exact same game across 3 different size pitches. So it was an 80 meter by 20 meter pitch, a 60 meter by 20 meter pitch, and a 40 meter by 20 meter pitch. He played the exact same duration, so it was 4 minutes of work followed by 4 minutes recovery, and it was 4 aside, so it was 4v4. Okay, so what he found was that the pitch size impacts the physical and technical performance of small-sided games. So if we think about that, the physical performance, well, probably technical first of all, by the size of the pitch, we're actually going to encourage different activities. So if we have a smaller pitch, we're probably going to encourage more technical activities like hand passing, because that is the actual correct decision to make. When the pitch gets that bit bigger, we're going to be looking for the strike or the hand pass, okay? So that actually influences how we perform the technical skills, the size of the pitch. And then the physical, we're going to be going into the bigger the pitch, we'll touch on in a minute, is going to influence on how much high-speed running we do, how many accels and decels we have. Okay, so what we found as well is that the players covered greater distance on the medium and large size pitches. Okay, so that makes sense. As the pitch got bigger, they were required to cover more distance. A unique one there was actually that the players were actually performed greater high-speed running and very high-speed running on the medium-sized pitch compared to even the large pitch. So you think the bigger the pitch, the more distance they have to cover, so they'll cover a higher distance. But what they've come up with, or the kind of their recommendation or their kind of presumption on it, is that actually the distance was that large that the players lost a little bit of motivation to make that 60 or 70 meter run once they broke the first tackle to get through the gate. Okay, so by actually having the distance that bit shorter, the motivation stayed higher, that when the player broke the tackle, reaching that gate was that bit more achievable, so they went at a harder pace. So motivation came into play. The next one, which makes a lot of sense, accelerations, acceleration frequency increased as the pitch size reduced. So we think about that, the pitch size reduced, we're going to be in closer contact to the players around us. We're going to have to use more change of direction, agility, movements to ensure that we decelerate in anticipation of the player in front of us, or we accelerate to get by a player. So it's going to be a lot more stop-starty, a lot more contact, and a lot more action. Another thing that actually we didn't put into the point, across each of these squares, the physiological demands, the heart rate demand of each of these games was the exact same. Okay, so we were getting the same physiological impact. It was actually that the pitch size more so influenced the physical demands, so high speed run and very high speed run, accelerations, decelerations, and the technical demands, and what skill we use. And then the last one, just for a consideration, how we think about it, none of these pitch sizes are wrong. It's just kind of more so in relation to they're all a menu of what we want to get out of the session. So if we want to expose the middle eight players who are expected to do a lot of high speed running in the matches, if we want the session to be geared towards them, we're going to pick a bigger pitch where high speed running is going to increase. Whereas if we want it to be more suited to the inside line of the forwards or defenders, where they're doing a lot shorter, sharper sprints, decelerations, change of direction activities, we're going to reduce the size of the pitch. And if we're in a lucky position, if you're with a county squad or something like that, you might actually have two different games going on where you can have the middle eight players and the substitutes who are competing for those positions in one game, which could be high speed running, a bigger pitch, and then you could have the inside lines doing a different activity as well. That'd be a very unique situation that not many of us get to do. And then the last one, kind of just as a last kind of, say, small sided games or class, even from a technical thing, is across all three different pitch sizes, players were overexposed to the technical demands of the game compared to a regular match. So we've heard it loads of times, small-sided matches give you more touches of the ball and make you do more work. Well, this study just reinforced that they were expected to do, they perform far more the technical skills of the game in the small-sized pitch. And to add, lads?
Yeah, just to add, I suppose the challenge we're kind of putting on coaches this evening is if we can tick all these boxes, but also embed our philosophy of play or style of play or a game model into these small-sided games. So we're getting all the examples Paul's listed above, but also working on our philosophy of play. And I suppose as coaches, that is the big challenge, and trying to embed our philosophy of play into the examples just described.
Yeah, and I suppose one other thing on the pitch size consideration. So the pitch dimensions that we used in this study was a 60 by 20 or a 40 by 20 or an 80 by 20. You're not restricted to having those dimensions of the pitch. It's more a case of actually that's the square meterage that elicited these changes. So a 60 by 20 could easily be a 40 by 40, or you can just mess around with the numbers yourself. Kind of. There is a calculation, I think, knocking around. Kieran, I think you use 10 meters squared, do you?
Yeah, 10 long, 10 meters long, 10 meters wide player in the square. There is a few more. I think Colin Nally has a more sophisticated breakdown per actual, quite broken down, but kind of simple one I would use is just 10 meters squared player.
I've tried that one as well, and kind of and it is small-sided games for me is a massive thing. Is kind of it's just analysing or seeing how it's going, and then if you did it one night and you did it 10 meters and you said, oh geez, I just didn't get the amount of accels and decels and contact I wanted in that game, I'm going to drop it to 8 meters per player. That's kind of the way you have to mess around with it. Like, don't get too worried about being precise to the button of a trundle wheel out, like, in relation to the size of the pitch.
So just on that, lads, I got a quick question there, just in case if either of you are aware of any studies that have examined or delved into examining the effect of the width of the pitch as altering the width of the pitch as opposed to altering the length of the pitch. Are you aware of any studies out there that have?
Yeah,
but go on, Kieran, work away.
It is as Paul just said there. It's more to do with the square meterage per player that's in the game. It doesn't matter if it's long or wide. It's just the space that the player is covering. There is a few different other small-sided game studies in Gaelic football, but there is a lot of studies, more detailed studies in soccer out there. But it is more so just to do what the player is covering in the square. More so, it doesn't matter if it's long or if it's wide. I suppose if you're looking to provide your length and width, then you're getting a wee more specific to the game. If you're putting in that width aspect and really hammering that home, like you could put in your wide channels. But again, as Paul said, it's to do with you do adjust it on site, especially when you're dealing with youth players. the dimensions for an adult will be totally different for the dimensions for a youth player if it's 4v4, 5v5 or whatever it is. So it is about just weighing it up. It is about weighing it up to what's in front of you every session to adjust that as you see it. But they were just kind of similar outlines.
And just on that, Kieran, just a quick question in relation to the 10 meters squared. Would that be for each player or for each 1v1 in the game?
Yeah, so like if it was 5v5, it would be kind of a 50 by 50 square. But again, that depending on your players' capabilities, that might be too big. And you may have to bring it down. It might be might be the width of it might come down or the length of it might come down. But again, you just adjust that as you see it. Or you might have one player left over and you put that player in as a floater and they might play with the team in possession. So again, I wouldn't get hung up too much. Like as that study shows, like 3 different pitch sizes and you still got your physical improvements, like your heart rate was the same throughout all pitch sizes. So again, it's not getting overly too hung up on the pitch sizes. Adjust it as you see fit for your players, because that study shows perfectly that you still will get that effect.
It's nearly, Kieran, it's nearly like think tactical first. So like what pitch size do you need to elicit the game that you want? So if we're looking for width and depth, we're going to need quite a big pitch, isn't it? Like, you know, and then from there, then we might find, oh geez, they just have too much distance to cover. So we might actually even change the length of the game. So we might actually reduce the length as opposed to we can't interfere with the dimensions of the game, because that's a key aspect that we want. So it's kind of, it's not set hard and fast. And that's probably where it gets that bit cloudier for anyone who likes specific numbers of they're working at this rate for this long and this is getting this impact, which high interval training gives us, because it's just that bit more trial and error and kind of getting your coach's eye and seeing how the players are performing at it. So it's just that little bit more coaching art as opposed to coaching science, I suppose.
So like, for example, like if you're working on a 3-man half forward line and their movement, like you're not going to close down their width because you want them to interchange across and make the pitch big, okay, but they may finish by just going through the gates and behind instead of operating to the goals, depending on the numbers you have. So it does depend. Or if it's your full forward line, you may keep your depth because you want to, or even using hurling example, turning and you want them to attack at goals. So it does depend on what you want from your game. If it's you're focusing on a blanket defence, you may make your pitch very small. You may filter 12 people into the 45 or past the halfway line and close it that way. So it does depend what you're looking to do from a tactical side of it, and then complementing it to get the physical side of it.
Yeah. Okay, we move on.
Yeah, so this is kind of just to put it all together just into a weekly overview. Okay, so Monday to Sunday with a game on a Sunday. Okay, so you're recovering after the game on a Sunday on your Monday. Okay, and Tuesday then this is your high training day. Okay, so your pitch principles is to do with your sub principles of play. Okay, so the pitches are smaller. There's a higher volume of accelerations and decelerations, but you still will get an aerobic effect. Okay, so your small pitch, small numbers, so varying between 5 versus 5 and 8v8. Like just as we were saying, that might be a 50 by 50 game for 5v5 and 80 by 80 game for 8v8, but then the 8v8 might be too big, you're not getting contact, you might go to 80 long, 50 wide, okay? So it would just depend on how you see it and what the focus of it is. So this is the longest session of the week as well. Your duration will be about 75 minutes, that's including warm-up. Okay, inside your session, your games are small and intense, so 3 to 5 minutes, 2-minute rest, okay, with maybe a quick coach debrief, okay, and you might do this 3 or 5 times throughout the session. Again, you got to judge on where your players at from the Sunday. If they're still really fatigued, on the Tuesday, you may adjust as you see fit, okay? Same again, going into your Thursday session. Okay, this is your main principles. Okay, so big pitch, focus is high speed running, very high speed running. So the players are opening up. They're covering big distances at fast speed. But again, they're still going to get their aerobic element. Okay, because it's over a long period of time. You're training for 45, 60 minutes, but inside that, you're going to be hitting your high-speed running. Okay, again, Your players determine 9v9, 15v15. Okay, if you're 9v9, you might not go full big pitches. You might lose the players. Okay, so you may have to set up differently. But again, it's depending on what numbers you have at training and what you can implement. Okay, but you're looking to create that high speed running. Okay, your game durations are a wee bit longer, so you want to focus on your main principles of play. You want to work on your transition from defense to attack. So you want them covering big distance, getting up your support runners, as we explained earlier, and your game repetitions might be 1 to 3. Again, very important to gauge what your players feel like coming into the Thursday. And then obviously, most importantly, how important is the game on a Sunday? Is it a challenge match? Is it early pre-season? Can we still go big on Thursday? Yes. If it's a league game that might not have huge importance on it, yes, we could go a wee bit bigger. If it's championship, yeah, it's a different story. We may tailor on the 45-minute side of it. Okay, so again, it is very important to communicate with your players, see where your players are at, and get a gauge yourself and see what the players are like during the session. If you see them fatiguing, you might stop at 45 minutes, you might stop at 40, especially if it's an important game on a Sunday. And then on the Sunday, obviously, it's a game, okay, that's including your warm-up, 15v15, obviously, okay, and it incorporates everything, high-speed running, very high-speed running, and your aerobic element. But inside your main principles, you're still going to get accelerations and decelerations. The intensity of them may be greater than on the Tuesday, but the volume will be higher on the Tuesday. So don't be getting caught up too much. It's just the main principle on the Thursday is your high-speed main principles, and on your Tuesday, it's your small pitches, sub-principles, accelerations and decelerations. Anything you have to add into that?
Yeah, a couple of things, I suppose. Sunday's in there as we've included the match, and we've put in all the details of the match because that is another training, physical training development aspect. So, like, you know, and it's probably one of the biggest ones that we have. So, like, don't underestimate that the training effect that the actual match exposes the players to as well. And then, as Kieran said, I suppose in the youth section where we are, and we don't have an answer for you, I suppose, but we just have to be aware of it is the multi-sport player and the dual player or the player playing multiple ages. They might have to, we just might have to alter it that slight bit, and generally probably this is the one area that we probably will try keep them involved if we can. So this is the game. Let's just remember that we're just actually playing the game that they're here to play. We'll probably strip away all the other stuff like the isolated linear speed work or the multi-direction work or any gym work we're doing. They're probably the first ones to go. This is probably the last one to go because this is all based on how we play the game, and the players need to understand the style of play and the game model that we're trying to implement as a team.
Yeah, and I suppose as well to even add, if you do have to adjust on the pitch, like you may just pull one of the players who may have a high training load just from one of the games. So if you're doing 4 or 5 minute games, they may only do 2 of them, okay? But they're still included and they still know the principles of what you're trying to embed. But again, as Paul said, the other aspects would probably go first or would go first before you take away from what they're here to do, and that's to play football or hurling.
Yeah, and as well, particularly in weeks where we're doing well or we're coming up to championship or the team is going well and you're happy where they're at, these aren't set in stone that you have to do these reps and durations and stuff like that. Like, Joe, particularly if you're coming up to championship and you think the work is done and they've clicked it and it all is just going well, you think, geez, they have it on, we're sound. You can always cut the session there, you're ready to go, like, you know. So the 10 to 15, very seldom, we'd hardly ever get to 15 minutes on Thursday. We'd hardly ever get to a 15-minute game by 3 on the Thursday. That'd be extremely seldom. So where we'd probably, if anything, where we'd use the 3 reps, it'd probably be in the 10 or maybe even 8 minutes it could be. So that's where we kind of use the 3 reps will be the lower end of the duration, and the higher end of the duration will be for the lower reps of the games. That's kind of the model we'd use. And then on the Tuesday, where we use the high reps, again, it's probably in that earlier phase where we're looking for that extra conditioning aspect as well. If we're really just trying to groove the game pattern, we probably don't want to be trying to groove it in too much of a fatigue state either. Is that fair enough, Kieran?
Yeah, nothing really much to add in that yet, but that's perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so that is us pretty much, guys. We're probably a bit quicker this week. What we have here, I'll send this out and it'll all be linked up, and I'll give you. So we'll have myself and Kieran's presentation where we did conditioning Gaelic football, which places more emphasis on the intervals. And there's a video for that as well. Kildare GAA, where we went a little bit more into probably reps and sets and stuff like that in relation to small-sided games. Kildare GAA did a hurling one there last Monday. John Dorn and Leon did it. And then the last one, the tactical periodization. If tactical periodization kind of awoke you there and you're thinking about it, hopefully you are. And Shane Mangan delivered an excellent presentation on the GAA webinar series there 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we'll send you a link to that as well. It's on YouTube and we have the slides as well. So again, probably the least questions we have ever out of all the modules we've done so far. So maybe, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll stay online for a couple of minutes. And if anyone has any questions, pop them in. If not, thank you very much. Hopefully you got something out of this evening.
Yeah, no, thank you for tuning in. And as Paul said, if you want to delve deeper into any specific topic, they'll be sent out on the email afterwards. But thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, guys. As well, thanks very much. And hopefully you can kind of have a little look at small-sided games now from a different angle, and maybe have a bit more focus on it at the same time as developing the physical aspects of it. So thank you very much.